Hiya, my name is Sonia. I am a designer maker. I started my business actually 8 years ago now. And in the last few years, things have changed quite a bit for me. And as a result, I have started to change and think about what success means to me. And over this past year, especially, I've been looking at how can I set up my business in a way that reflects the kind of life that I want to live and the success that I am going for. So today I thought I would chat to you about kind of what sort of things have happened that have made me think about this and how I have gone about moving my business towards a different kind of model. So I'll be honest, this isn't the first time that I have started recording this. I've done a few different cuts and then life's happened. I've had to do school runs, all sorts of things. The most recent one is COVID, so my voice might sound a bit croaky, but I kind of have a theory sometimes that getting started is always the trickiest part. So if ever I'm starting a new routine, quite often I'll do it on a Friday because I've then got that first one out of the way. So on the Monday, I'm not starting, I'm just continuing and keeping it going. And with everything that's happening at the moment, with, feeling ill, I've got tech woes, it would be so easy to leave this until January, but getting this first one done isn't going to get any easier. So I've decided to just go for it. So hopefully I will last. My voice won't give out. If there's any cuts, it's probably because I'm coughing. So I am a mum of three. I sell quilt pattern designs. I have been a creative mentor and I took a step back from business in February, and it's a result of a few different things which kind of created, I guess, almost like a perfect storm. It started with COVID. Life has just been really busy. We had a family loss which was difficult to kind of go through, and underpinning all of those things at the same time was going through the menopause, and that's not been a fun journey for me. And so and I want to talk about that in more detail in a different episode because that has fundamentally changed how I approach life and how I want to run my business. So yeah, we'll cover that in another episode. But I think the other thing probably is that I'm going to be 50 next year, and you know there are moments in life, or certainly for me, you kind of get to a landmark, and that could be, I don't know, I remember when the kids got out of buggies, that was a big landmark. But 50 feels like a big sort of landmark, and just sort of has made me stop and think about where am I, what am I doing? Thinking about retirement as well, if I'm honest. How do we want to retire? What do we want to be doing over the next few years? How are we going to achieve the things that we want to achieve? And so yeah, there's been a lot of thinking going on. So I started to look at different ways of running a business because when I started I was very gung-ho. I had big dreams and aspirations, and when I was looking into how to set up a business and how to do things, there are a lot of people giving very similar advice around the kind of the formula and the structure that you should have. But if you want to live life slightly differently, then that business model needs to be slightly different as well. I came across a few things, a few different terms. It was sort of gentle business, slow living, life first business, and there were lots of different definitions of them, and I think that's for purpose, right? Because my version of success is going to look very different to everybody else's, and the things that I want to include in my life, the things that I want to do, could look very different to someone else's as well. And so there isn't really any one solid definition of what a slow business, gentle business, life first business is. And so I started looking into the slow living movement, and I kind of Googled what is the definition of that. And Wikipedia says that slow living is a lifestyle which encourages a slower approach to aspects of everyday life, involving completing tasks at a slower pace. And when I read that, I thought it was a really nice place to start, because to me, that is doing the things that you want to do in a way that feels right to you and is sustainable. And when I think about that in relation to my business, I start I started by thinking about what are the different things that I'm doing, and when do I do them all? And the first thing that came up for me is time. And a lot of that statement, I think, is about being intentional. And time is probably the biggest area for me where I think I have more of it than I actually do. And I have to be really intentional with how I use it, because I don't have as much as I think I do. And a lot of that is because I have 3 children, and they are grown now, they're teens, but we're still in the, they're not two, one's driving, two are, but so there's still a lot of Uber driving. I've got one that has started at college, so my days, I'm back to doing school runs now, which hasn't happened for a while. And so a lot of my time is dictated to me by school runs, school holidays, illnesses, supporting family and friends, which is also important to me. And so if I actually list out the time that I have available, it's generally a lot less than I think it is. And I tend to be over ambitious with the tasks that I want to do in that time. And so one of the first areas that I started was by looking at what time do I have. And that helped me to be much more realistic with what am I going to do in that time. And one of the things that I want to try and do within that time is also take time for myself, which doesn't always happen, but I do aim to do that. So once I'd listed out what are the hours that I have available to dedicate to work and to the time that I want to spend at work, it was then going on to looking at what are all the different jobs that I am doing within my business. And there's a lot. It's just me in my business. It's a small business. Um, but as a result, I wear many different hats. You've got the social media, the marketing, the admin, the development, the creation, content, all the different things that happen. One of the things you'll learn about me from my videos is I love tea, and my favourite is Yorkshire tea, and it has to be in a nice big mug. So yes, looking at the tasks that I do in the business over the last few years, because things have been tricky, I have been prioritizing my tasks quite a lot, because I think in any business, not all tasks are created equal. And by that, I mean that some tasks are essential and you have to do them. Some tasks we do because we think they move the needle and they help us to grow, but maybe they don't. If we really look at it, maybe they don't give us the rewards and the return that we're looking for. Um, and the others are ones that we want to do, but maybe we don't dedicate enough time to doing them. So that could be planning your business, it could be spending time working on new ideas, whatever it is. And I went through all the things in my business, and I think that there are many different ways of achieving similar results depending on how quickly you want to see results and what is important to prioritizing. An example of that would be looking at creating an audience, which is obviously essential to running a business. And I'm saying this 8 years in, so if you're at the beginning of your journey, that you're going to have very different priorities. I have an audience, I have a newsletter list, so I'm not starting from scratch, as it were. But even when I started, I had young toddlers and I had limited time. And so if you're looking at building an audience, in this example, what are the different ways that you can do it? So you could look at social media, you could look at creating blog content, you could look at doing a newsletter. Which of those are going to give you the best return on investment? And in this, I mean investment of your time, because if you haven't got much time, it's about making sure you're being as effective with it as you can. That's how I've always tried to approach it. And when I started out, I didn't have a huge amount of time. And so I focused on creating content which was more longer form. So the content that tends to last longer, which is often blog posts, or YouTube is an example. It's not something I've dabbled in before. And newsletters also help to nurture your audience, but they're not always quick wins. So if you create a blog post, people might not necessarily see it. So you could support that with social media on Instagram. The thing that I've always had with the short socials, such as TikTok and Instagram and everything else, is historically, and I think it's changing, but historically, they've not always been long-term content. They're very much short-term. Things will go viral and then generally they will disappear. So in my life, if I'm not consistent in terms of creating that content because life is lifing, it's going to be quite difficult to build up an audience there, because I'm not always showing up, and so people could forget about me. But if I'm creating the longer form content and making sure that I'm focusing on doing the search engine optimization and doing pins on Pinterest or whatever it is that I want to focus on, it might not get me immediate results, but it is going to create a foundation that will gradually be built on. And so that's a very long-winded way and an example of just looking at the tasks that you're doing in your business and thinking about which is the right ones for you, and are you looking for immediate results which might not sustain themselves if you take a step back from your business, or are you looking at more of a longer term plan? And some of this will depend on what your situation is and how quickly you're looking to build your business. But I think it's really important in our businesses to question the tasks that we're doing, because it is easy to add things on and to get swayed by what other tasks other creators are doing and thinking we should do them too. And they're not always a good fit for us, I don't think. I think one of the things that I've been really delving into over the last few months, probably a couple of years now actually, is really going into sort of my skill set and my personality. So if you've ever been in a job where you've done a personality test, are you a complete finisher? I'm not a complete finisher. But just understanding what my skill sets are and how I best work, because for me, wanting to build a gentle business, creating something where I am having to be visible all the time, talking to people all the time, showing up regularly, I can't commit to that for a number of reasons, because my life is not set up like that. I'm quite an introvert, so the idea of speaking to people all the time, I need downtime as well. And so I'm kind of setting myself up for success and burnout by doing that. So understanding myself allows me to look at what are the things that I can focus on in my business that will allow me to build something that will work better, because hopefully, because it's set up around my skills and my strengths, it's going to be easier for me to do. And one area that I've done this is by looking at things like human design, which I have really enjoyed, but really understanding your own skills and strengths along with the time that you have and the tasks that you want to focus on, then really starts to set you up for what is your dream business structure looking like. And then I guess the last thing to say on tasks is spending time looking at how important each one of them is, because I have found that when there's a life emergency, because they always come up, don't they, knowing which tasks I can drop and not feel guilty about really eases the pressure and the guilt. Because in reality, I know that the one thing that I need to do each week is to send a newsletter, because that is nurturing my audience and that will generate sales for me. So if I do nothing else in the week but I send a newsletter, I know that I am moving my business forward. It's not sustainable long term. I need to be doing all the other jobs as well. But in an emergency situation, knowing what I can drop and what I have to do is really helpful. And I think following on from that, the other thing that I've been diving into is systems and automations, because I think if you want to run a gentle business so that you can live your life and not be tied to a computer, systems and automations are your superpower. And a classic example of a system would be a newsletter sequence. So spending a day or two, or however long it takes, to create a sequence of emails that get sent out to someone when they join your newsletter list, regardless of whether or not you're sleeping or at your desk, is amazing. And that work can keep working for you for weeks, months, years to come, depending on how often you want to change your emails. And so that's really helpful. But I think the other side of that, which maybe isn't always looked at as much, is templating any repeatable work that you do. And so for me, I think I started doing this maybe a year or two ago, but for any work I do that will be done again, I will always create a template or write down notes so that when I go to do it again, I'm not starting from scratch and it can be easier. And so that can happen in a few different ways. So, writing pattern designs, I have I guess you could call it a Bible of instructions for regular techniques and steps that are included in my patterns, so that when it comes to that section, I can just copy and paste and then alter as I need to. But on the other side, it could also look like a document which details all of my launch sequence, for example. So it could be when I've sent emails, a copy of the emails that I've sent, um, a copy of the sales page that I used last time that I then tweak for the next one. And doing that means that it's made me more efficient at doing things. If I've done a project, like say a launch, and things went well, or maybe things didn't go quite so well, I try and make a note of it in that document so that next time I can make it better again. And it just makes things easier, because you're just not starting from scratch all the time. And so, if you are thinking about running a gentle business, and I know this has been a really quick overview, I would start by looking at what time you actually have available to work, what tasks you're doing in your business, and how well they sit with you, and how much they move the needle. And then also looking at what systems and automations you could maybe bring into your business, because I found that has been really helpful for me. And I'm going to leave a link below. So if you'd like to join my newsletter, I will be putting together some resources and information and giving you a peek behind the scenes of what I'm working on. And I'm going to be talking in my videos about different topics such as gentle business, creativity, and midlife. And to help you go to videos that are maybe of interest to you, I've created some topic flags. You might have seen one on the front cover, just so that you know what the video is about, and to help you not go to the ones that maybe aren't as, of as much interest to you. So I do hope that you have found this video interesting. I think my voice has lasted, which is a pleasant surprise. And if you have any questions, please do pop them below. And if you are running a gentle business or have any questions about one or are looking to move towards a gentle business, I'd love you to talk about in the comments what your business is and what are the things that you particularly struggle with. And I will see you on the next video. Bye.